Lee Minna wiped the sweat from her forehead as she finished checking the vital signs of her seventh patient that night. The orbital medical station Harmony never slept. Floating in the darkness between Earth and the outer colonies like a beacon of hope for other wounded and sick, she had been working these corridors for 3 years now, and every shift brought something new through those airlock doors. Tonight felt different, though. The station buzzed with unusual activity as several alien dignitaries had arrived for some kind of treaty discussion. Minna didn't care much for politics. Her job was simple: heal the hurt, comfort the scared, and get everyone back on their feet. The medical bay doors hissed open, and two security guards escorted in a tall figure covered in green scales Ambassador Vextlov. The reptilian coalition walked with the arrogance that came with power. His yellow eyes scanned the room like a predator sizing up prey. Minna had treated his species before. They were usually polite, if a bit cold. "Ambassador, please take a seat on bed 7, Minna said professionally, pulling up his medical chart on her tablet. "I see you're here for your standard diplomatic health screening and vaccination updates," Vexteles. Forked tongue flicked out as he settled onto the examination bed. His scales made a soft scratching sound against the medical sheets. "Make it quick. Nurse, I have important matters to attend to." Minna nodded and began preparing the injection. The vaccination was routine for anyone traveling between different atmospheric systems. She had given thousands of these shots without any problems as she approached with the syringe. Vextel's eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her skin crawl. "This might sting a little," she said, reaching for his arm to clean the injection site. That's when everything went wrong. Vextel's clawed hand shot out faster than a striking snake, grabbing Minna's hip and pulling her closer. His grip was strong enough to bruise, and his claws dug through her uniform into her skin. She could smell his breath, hot and metallic. "Such soft skin," he hissed, his other hand reaching toward her chest. "I've always wondered what human females feel like." Time seemed to slow down. Minna's training kicked in, but not the medical kind. Her father had been a soldier, and he'd taught her that sometimes you had to fight to survive. She grabbed Vextel's extended arm with both hands and twisted hard, using his own momentum against him. The crack echoed through the medical bay like a gunshot. Vextel screamed, a sound like metal scraping against stone. His arm bent at an angle that wasn't natural for any species. He released her immediately, clutching his broken limb to his chest. "You will pay for this, human," he hissed through gritted teeth, his yellow eyes blazing with fury and pain. "Do you know who I am? I am an ambassador. This is an act of war." The security guards rushed in, their weapons drawn. But they weren't pointing them at Vextel. They were pointing them at Minna. "Step away from the ambassador." One of them shouted. Min-Shah raised her hands, still holding the unused syringe. "He assaulted me. I was defending myself." More security arrived, along with medical staff to treat Vextel's injury. The medical bay became chaos as doctors worked to set the ambassador's arm, while he continued to threaten Minna in his native language. The translation device picked up words like revenge and human scum. Within an hour, Administrator Park Dong arrived. He was a thin man who always looked worried about something. Today, he looked terrified. "Nurse Lee," he said, quietly, pulling her aside. "We need to talk." They walked to his office in silence. Through the station's viewports, Minna could see the lights of several alien ships docked at the station. More were arriving by the hour. "I've reviewed the security footage," Park Dongwoo said once they were alone. "I can see what happened." Minna felt a wave of relief. "Then you know I was defending myself." "That doesn't matter." His voice was cold as space itself. Ambassador Vextel is demanding your immediate termination and extradition to face charges on his home world. But I didn't do anything wrong. You broke the arm of one of the most powerful beings in this sector of the galaxy, Park said, rubbing his temples. The Reptilian Coalition is threatening to withdraw from the peace treaty. Do you understand what that means? War. Minar. Millions of deaths. So you're going to sacrifice me to keep them happy. We cannot risk diplomatic relations over one nurse, he said. Not meeting her eyes. I'm sorry, but you're terminated. Effective immediately. Security will escort you to collect your belongings. Minos stared at him in disbelief. 3 years of perfect service, of saving lives and following every protocol, meant nothing. One moment of defending herself against assault, and she was thrown away like garbage. As she packed her few personal items from her locker, she could hear the whispers from other staff members. Some looked at her with sympathy, others with fear. Everyone knew that standing up to the aliens meant losing everything. Walking toward the transport dock with her single bag, Minar had no idea that her simple act of self-defense had already begun spreading through the communication networks across human space. Her story was being told and retold. For the first time in decades, someone had fought back. Mindash sat in her tiny apartment, staring at the half-empty coffee cup in her hands. 24 hours had passed since she lost her job, and the silence was driving her crazy. Her communication device had been buzzing all day with messages from friends and family, but she couldn't bring herself to answer them. What was she supposed to say? That she was now unemployed and probably banned from working at any medical facility in human space. The apartment felt smaller than usual. It was just one room with a bed, a small kitchen, and a viewport that looked out into the darkness of space. She had called it home for 3 years, but now it felt like a prison cell. Every shadow seemed to move. Every sound from the corridor outside made her jump. She was reaching for the remote to turn on the news when her door exploded inward. The blast threw her backward over the couch as chunks of metal and plastic filled the air. Through the smoke and debris, 3 figures emerged like nightmares. They were tall, covered in dark green scales, and their eyes glowed like yellow flames in the darkness. Reptilian hunters. The kind that tracked criminals across the galaxy. Target acquired. The lead hunter hissed, raising a weapon that hummed with deadly energy. Minar, you are coming with us. Minna's training kicked in. She rolled behind the kitchen counter just as the first laser blast turned her coffee table into burning ash. The smell of melted plastic filled the air, and the temperature in the room spiked from the heat of the weapons. Surrender now, human. Another hunter called out. Make this easy for everyone. Easy. Minar almost laughed. Nothing about her life had been easy lately. She grabbed a kitchen knife, knowing it was useless against their armor, but it made her feel better. The hunters moved through her apartment like they owned it, their clawed feet scratching against the floor. She remembered the ventilation shaft above her bed. It was small, but she was smaller. As the hunters closed in, she leaped onto her bed and punched out the vent cover. The metal grate clattered to the floor just as another laser blast scorched the wall where her head had been. She's in the vents. One of them roared. Mindash crawled through the narrow shaft as fast as she could, her knees scraping against the metal. Behind her, she could hear the hunters trying to follow, but they were too big. Their frustrated growls echoed through the ventilation system like angry thunder. The shaft was a maze of twists and turns. She had no idea where she was going, but anywhere was better than back there. Her lungs burned, and her hands were cut from the rough metal, but she kept moving. The sounds of pursuit grew fainter, but she knew they hadn't given up. After what felt like hours, she found another vent cover and kicked it out. She dropped into a maintenance tunnel deep in the station's lower levels. The air was thick and humid, filled with the smell of recycled atmosphere and machine oil. Pipes and cables ran along the walls like the veins of some giant creature. She was trying to figure out which direction to go when someone grabbed her shoulder. Min-dash or spun. The kitchen knife still in her hand, ready to fight. But instead of a scaled hunter, she found herself face to face with a human man. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with graying hair and scars on his face that spoke of old battles. His clothes were stained with grease and dust. "Easy there, Doc," he said, raising his hands. "I'm on your side. Who are you?" Mina demanded, not lowering the knife. "Kim Jae-ho. I handle cargo down here in the Forgotten Places." He looked at the knife and smiled grimly. "That's not going to help you much. Against what's coming." "What do you mean?" "They're hunting you," he said, his voice serious. "Half the station's talking about the nurse who broke an ambassador's arm. The other half wants you dead before you cause more trouble." Minna felt her heart sink. "Great. So I'm completely alone." "Not exactly." Jae-ho turned and started walking deeper into the tunnel. "Come on. There are others like us down here." She followed him through a maze of maintenance passages. The station was huge, and she had never realized how much of it was hidden. From the regular crew, there were entire sections that had been forgotten or abandoned over the years. Jae-ho moved through them like he had been born in these tunnels. "Used to be a Marine," he explained as they walked. 20 years fighting aliens on the Rim worlds. Came back to find out we were supposed to be friends with the same species that killed my squad mates. They passed through a section where the lights flickered, casting strange shadows on the walls. Minna could hear the hum of machinery and the distant sound of footsteps. Someone else was down here. "How many others?" she asked. "More than you'd think. Station workers, former soldiers, people who got tired of bowing and scraping every time an alien looked at them wrong." Jae-ho stopped at a heavy door marked with warnings in multiple languages. "They fired you for defending yourself. But that's not the worst part." "What's the worst part?" "The bounty." He pulled out a small device and showed her a holographic wanted poster. Her face stared back at her, along with a number that made her stomach drop. 50,000 credits. Dead or alive. Minna stared at the poster in shock. "For breaking someone's arm. For showing other humans that we don't have to take it anymore." Jae-ho opened the door, and warm light spilled out from the room beyond. "Welcome to the Resistance, Doc. Your real life starts now." The room beyond the door was nothing like Minna expected. Instead of a dark hideout, she found herself in a well-lit space filled with computer screens, communication equipment, and maps of the station. About 20 people were working at various stations, their faces focused and determined. It looked more like a military command center than a hiding place. "Welcome to the Iron Will," Jae-ho said, leading her toward a woman standing near the largest screen. The woman turned around, and Minna was surprised to see someone who looked like she could have been a teacher or an office worker. Han Sora was in her 40s, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and graying hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She didn't look like a rebel leader, but when she spoke, her voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "So you're the nurse who's got the entire reptilian coalition screaming for blood," Sora said, extending her hand. "I'm Han Sora. We've been waiting to meet you." "Waiting for me." Minna shook her hand, confused. "I just broke some alien's arm. I didn't start a revolution." Sora smiled, but there was sadness in her eyes. "Let me show you something." She led Minna to a wall covered with photographs and documents. At first glance, it looked like a memorial wall. But as Minna looked closer, she realized what she was seeing. Each photo showed a human face, and beneath each photo was a story of assault, abuse, or humiliation at the hands of alien species. "This is Kim Eugene," so Ross said, pointing to a photo of a young woman. She was a translator on a diplomatic mission. A Centaurian official assaulted her during a peace conference. When she reported it, she was told it was a cultural misunderstanding and fired for causing embarrassment. Mina's stomach twisted as she looked at more photos. How many? Hundreds that we know of. Probably thousands more who never spoke. Up. Sora's voice was steady. But Mina could hear the anger underneath. Dock workers beaten by alien supervisors, scientists whose research was stolen, engineers forced to sabotage their own work to avoid diplomatic incidents. Mina stared at the wall in horror. Why didn't anyone do anything? Because every time someone tried to fight back, they disappeared or lost everything they had worked for. Sora pulled up a chair and sat down heavily. My daughter was one of the first. She was working on a research station when a group of insectoid aliens decided humans were good for entertainment. She fought back, and they killed her, the official. Reports said it was an accident during a cultural exchange. The room fell silent except for the hum of computers and the distant sound of the station's life support systems. Mina felt like she was drowning in the weight of all these stories. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Don't be sorry. Be angry." Sora stood up and walked to the main screen. "Because you did something none of us could do. You fought back, and the whole galaxy saw it." The screen lit up with news feeds from across human space. Mina watched in amazement as reports poured in from dozens of worlds on the mining colony of New Sol. Human workers had walked off their jobs rather than submit to daily searches by their alien overseers. On the agricultural world of Bizon Prime, farmers were refusing to sell their crops to alien traders who had been cheating them for years. The video of you breaking that ambassador's arm has been downloaded over 50 million times. Sora explained. Someone in the medical bay leaked the security footage, and now every human in the galaxy has seen it. Mina watched herself on the screen. Saw the moment when she grabbed Vextler's arm and twisted, in slow motion. She could see the determination on her face, the refusal to be a victim. It was strange watching herself become a symbol. "Colonial militias are mobilizing," Jeho added, pointing to another screen showing military movements. "Ships that were supposed to be decommissioned are suddenly back in service. Training camps that were shut down are reopening. But I just defended myself," Mina protested. "I didn't mean to start anything." "That's exactly why it worked," Sora said. "For decades, humans have been told that resistance means war, that fighting back means death for millions. But you didn't think about politics or diplomacy. You just refused to be violated, and that's something every human can understand." The screens round the room showed more reports. On the frontier world of Dago Station, human security forces had arrested alien criminals instead of looking the other way. On the trade hub of Incheonport, human merchants were demanding fair prices instead of accepting whatever aliens offered. "The reptilian coalition is panicking," Sora continued. "They've called emergency sessions with other alien governments. They're talking about military action to restore order." Military action. Mina felt cold. "They think if they make an example of you, humans will go back to being obedient. They don't understand that you can put freedom back in the bottle once it's been opened," a young man at a communications station called out. "We're getting reports from the outer colonies. 3 more systems have declared human-only governance zones," Izora nodded grimly. "It's spreading faster than we ever imagined, in 3 days. You've done what we couldn't do in 20 years of planning." Mina looked round the room at all. These people who had been working in secret, gathering evidence, planning for a day that might never come. Now that day was here, and it had started with one nurse who refused to be touched. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we find out if humans are ready to stop being the galaxy's favorite victims." Sora said, "You started something you can't stop, Mindasha." And that's exactly what we needed. The alarms started screaming at dawn. Minna jerked awake in the small cot they had given her in the Iron Will's hidden base, her heart racing as red warning lights flashed across the walls round her. People were jumping up from their beds, grabbing weapons and rushing to their stations. "What's happening?" she called out to Jeho as he ran past. "They're here," he shouted back. "The whole damn reptilian fleet." Mina followed him to the command center, where every screen showed the same terrifying sight. Massive alien warships were dropping out of hyperspace around the station, their dark hulls bristling with weapons that could turn the entire structure into floating debris in seconds. The ships were beautiful in a deadly way, like giant serpents, made of metal and 57 vessels and counting. Reportedly Kyungmin, the young communications officer, dreadnoughts, battle cruisers, and hunter-killer squadrons, they're not here to negotiate. Sora stood at the center of it all, her calm demeanor never wavering even as death surrounded them. "Any word from the station administrator? Park is having a complete breakdown," Kyungmin replied. "He's been trying to contact Earth Command for 3 hours, but no one's answering." Minnow watched the screens in horror. Each alien ship was 10 times the size of the medical station, armed with weapons that could glass entire planets. She had seen the aftermath of reptilian military action on the news feeds. Cities turned to molten craters, colonies wiped from existence, all because of her. "This is my fault," she whispered. "I should turn myself in." "Like hell you will," Jeho growled. "Those lizards think they can intimidate us into giving up one of our own. They're about to learn different." The main communication channel crackled to life, and Ambassador Vextel's voice filled the room. His arm was in a regeneration cast, and his yellow eyes burned with fury. "Attention Orbital Medical Station Harmony," he hissed. "You are harboring a criminal who has committed assault against a diplomatic representative of the Reptilian Coalition. Surrender Limina immediately, or face the consequences." Administrator Park's shaking voice responded, "Ambassador, please. We're just a medical facility. We don't want any trouble. The trouble has already begun. Human, you have 1 hour to comply, or we will take the criminal by force, and if she resists, we will make an example of this entire station." The channel went dead, leaving only the sound of terrified breathing and the hum of life support systems. Mina looked round at all the faces staring at her. These people had risked everything to protect her, and now they were all going to die because of her actions. "I have to go," she said quietly. "I won't let you all suffer from my choices." "No one's going anywhere," Sora said firmly. "We knew this day would come. We've been preparing for it." "Preparing for what?" "To fight 57 warships with kitchen knives and maintenance tools." Before Sora could answer, every screen in the room flickered and changed. Instead of showing the alien fleet, they now displayed empty space beyond the station. But that emptiness was changing. Points of light were appearing, growing larger and brighter as ships dropped out of hyperspace. Human ships, not the small patrol craft or cargo haulers that usually visited the station. These were warships, painted in the blue and white colors of the human defense fleet, cruisers, destroyers, and massive battleships that Minar had only seen in recruitment videos. "Sweet Mother of Earth," Jeho breathed. Where did they all come from? More ships kept arriving. Fighters launched from carrier decks, forming defensive screens round the larger vessels. Within minutes, the human fleet equaled the reptilian force in size, and more ships were still coming. The communication system crackled again. But this time it was a human voice, strong and clear. "Attention, Reptilian Coalition Fleet. This is Captain Yunjiwoo of the Human Defense Fleet. You are in violation of interspecies treaty by threatening a civilian medical station. Withdraw immediately." Ambassador Vextel's reply came quickly. "Captain, we are here to retrieve a criminal who assaulted a diplomatic representative. This is a matter of galactic law. Negative." "Ambassador, Lee Minor is a human citizen under the protection of the Human Defense Fleet. Any attempt to harm our citizen will be considered an act of war." Minor stared at the screens in disbelief. The human ships were moving into formation, placing themselves between the alien fleet and the medical station. Fighters buzzed between the larger vessels like angry wasps, their weapons powered and ready. "I don't understand," she said. "How did they know to come here?" So Ross smiled for the first time since Minor had met her, because word travels first when someone finally stands up to a bully. "Your story spread through every human colony, every military base, every ship in the fleet. They came because they're tired of watching aliens push us around on the screen." More human ships continued to arrive. Some were clearly military vessels, but others were converted cargo ships and passenger liners, armed with whatever weapons their crews could find. Miners, traders, colonists, and scientists had all come to protect one nurse who had refused to be a victim. "Look at that," Jeho said, pointing at a particular group of ships. "Those are from the Outer Rim colonies. They traveled for 3 days straight to get here. The reptilian fleet was clearly caught off guard. Their ships began to spread out, taking defensive positions. But they were no longer the overwhelming force they had been minutes before. For every alien ship, there were no human vessels facing them down. The reptilians made a mistake," so Roar explained. "They thought humans were like other species they'd conquered, individualistic, selfish. They didn't understand that when you threaten one of us, you threaten all of us." Minor watched as the two fleets faced each other across the darkness of space. Her simple act of self-defense had brought them to the edge of war, but it had also shown the galaxy something important. Humans weren't just another species to be pushed around and humiliated. They were pack animals, and the pack had finally decided to bare its teeth. The standoff lasted 6 hours. Two massive fleets facing each other across the cold darkness of space, weapons charged and ready to turn the area into a graveyard of twisted metal and broken dreams. Minor watched from the Iron Will's command center as negotiations went back and forth between the ships, each side testing the other's resolve. Then everything changed. A new voice cut through the communication channels, calm and authoritative. "This is Admiral Choi Taimin of the Human Defense Fleet. I'm coming aboard the medical station to resolve this situation personally." Minor had heard of Admiral Choi. He was a legend in human space, the man who had held the outer colonies together during the border wars. Seeing his shuttle dock at the station felt like watching a myth come to life. When he entered the Iron Will space, followed by a full honor guard, Minor was surprised by how ordinary he looked. He was shorter than she expected, with grey hair and kind eyes. But when he spoke, everyone in the room stood straighter. "Nurse Lee," he said, walking directly to her. "I believe we have some business to finish." 2 hours later, Minor found herself in the station's main conference room, a place she had never expected to see. The room was packed with human officials, military officers, and members of the galactic press. On the other side of the long table sat Ambassador Vextel, his yellow eyes burning with rage, and his broken arm still in its regeneration cast. "Let's be clear about what happened here," Admiral Choi began, his voice carrying to every corner of the room. Ambassador Vextel sexually assaulted a human medical professional. She defended herself. instead of addressing his criminal behavior. The Reptilian Coalition has threatened military action against innocent civilians, Vextales. Fort tongue flicked out angrily. She broke my arm. I am a diplomatic representative. This is an act of war. No, Mina said, surprising everyone by speaking up. This is an act of self-defense, and if you think breaking your arm was bad, you should see what we do to people who threaten our families. The room fell silent. Mina could feel hundreds of eyes on her, but she didn't care. She had spent too many years being afraid, watching her people bow and scrape to aliens who saw them as entertainment. Your diplomacy ends today. She continued, her voice growing stronger. For too long, humans have been told to accept abuse in the name of peace. We've been told that our dignity is less important than your comfort. Well, I have news for you, Ambassador. Touch one human, face all humans. Vextel started to stand, but Admiral Choi's hand moved toward his weapon, and the reptilian sat back down. Round the table, other alien representatives shifted nervously. They had come expecting to see humans grovel and apologize instead. They were seeing something they had never witnessed before. Human unity, the Reptilian Coalition, has 48 hours to withdraw all military forces from human space, Admiral Choi announced. Any alien found guilty of assault against human citizens will be prosecuted under human law. And any government that threatens retaliation will find themselves facing the full might of the human Devon. Say fleet, the negotiations continued for hours, but the outcome was never in doubt. Outside, the human fleet had grown to over 300 ships, with more arriving every hour. The Reptilian Coalition was facing the largest military force humanity had ever assembled, and they had no allies willing to join them in a war over one ambassador's broken arm. When the alien fleet finally withdrew, the celebration on the medical station could be heard throughout the sector. Humans who had been living in fear for decades were finally free to stand tall. The video of Mina's confrontation with Vextel was broadcast across the galaxy, and other species began to take notice. The aquatic collective, who had been bullying human colonies for years, suddenly found their trade agreements cancelled. The insectoid hive, known for their brutal treatment of human workers, discovered that no human would work for them anymore. Across the galaxy, the balance of power was shifting. 3 months later, Mina stood in the medical bay of the brand-new Human Defense Fleet hospital ship Indomitable. She wore the same nurse's uniform she had always worn, but now it came with a different meaning. She wasn't just a medical professional anymore. She was a symbol of human courage and a reminder that no one had the right to hurt them. The ship's captain, Lee Donghan, stopped by during her shift. "How are you settling in?" "Nurse Lee, it's different," she admitted, checking the charts of her patients. "But good different. No one tries to grab me anymore. That's because they know what happens when they do," he said with a smile. Word has spread pretty far about the nurse who started a revolution. Mina looked out through the medical bay's viewport at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, human colonies were thriving under their own governance. Human ships patrolled space routes that had once been controlled by alien pirates. Human dignity was no longer negotiable. Her simple act of self-defense had broken more than Vextel's arm. It had shattered the invisible chains that had kept humanity subservient for generations. Now, when alien species looked at humans, they saw not victims, but equals who would fight for their own. The age of human submission was over. The age of human dignity had begun with one nurse who refused to be touched. And it would continue with every human who remembered that they were worth defending. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Humans were pack animals, and the pack protected its own, the ND.